In this video, I want to go over some of the high points of the prefrontal cortex and the nervous system and how those are showing up in your life and why it's important to understand these things. So let me pull this up. It's a little presentation. You've heard me talking about the programmable self, or we have these conditioned programs that are running from our beliefs. Here's a little bit deeper of a dive into how that's working. So the programmable self is the concept that an individual's mind and nervous system are shaped by early experiences with caregivers or parent figures, particularly during the brain's theta state before age 8. So the theta state is a state of hypnosis, and everything that you experience as capital T truth, like this is God's truth. This period programs subconscious beliefs into us, right? Either core wounded beliefs or core empowered beliefs, because you can't have one without the other. So if you've got core wounded beliefs, well, then you also have got core empowered beliefs that really empower you. And this whole process conditions the nervous system to recognize familiar patterns, influencing perceptions, behaviors, and emotional responses throughout life. Now, let me pull my phone out because I just screenshotted this. I wasn't planning on doing this, but this is how it goes. This is from Elder. Let's see. Here we go. This is from James Hollis's book, he's like in his 80s now. So an elderly gentleman, and he has an incredible, I've put this in the resources. He's got an incredible interview with Andrew Huberman on the Huberman Laboratory podcast. He says that we develop these familiar dynamics from our childhood, the magical Eden. He wrote a whole book called The Eden Project, in search of the magical other. And that's where I've gotten a lot of these examples, like using Eden. Anyways, he says we develop these familiar dynamics that characterize our relationships. He says, so what is repetitive, of course, is the psychodynamic of the relationship, not its outer appearance. What he means is that inside of relationships, we have these patterns that keep repeating. Same old fights, right? Same shit, same shovel, different shit, right? It's just these pattern dynamics that keep playing out. So then he proposes this question. He says, who in their right mind would seek out someone and say, I want you to repeat my childhood wounding. I will love you because you are so familiar. But we do this all the time. It is truly frightening to realize how little one is aware in the formation of intimate relationships and how powerful is our programmed desire for what we have known in the past. What is known is what is sought. So what we've known in the past becomes familiar, and then that's what we seek in the future, and it's all happening at an unconscious level. So it's outside of our awareness. It's in our subconscious, right? But below our awareness. What is known is what is sought, even if what is known is wounding. So it is the magical other, that's the person that we partnered with, and they're the ones who complete us, and they're the perfect ones. And then after a few years of marriage, all of a sudden it starts going to shit and you start triggering each other. They're no longer the magical other, but they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be triggering these wounds because you partnered with them unconsciously, because the wounding is what's familiar. Now, the same is true on the opposite side, right? It's like you have really good stuff too, and that is also really familiar. So you're always going to partner with what's really familiar to you. So it is that the magical other is loaded up with all of the familiarity of our psychic history. If there is an enemy that owns us, it is the power of that history with its ability to usurp our awareness. So us attracting somebody who is so familiar to us, even though we're trying to attract someone that is so different from our last partner or so different from mom or different from dad. And this happens because we're a programmable self, right? So going back to this, this also conditions the nervous system to recognize familiar patterns influencing perceptions, behaviors, and emotional responses throughout life. Now, how this is working, so we're going to talk about the mind and we're going to talk about the body. So the prefrontal cortex, again, this is high-level overview stuff. The prefrontal cortex integrates and moderates the subconscious beliefs that we have, so we're not even aware of these, and the nervous system responses that were programmed during early childhood, allowing individuals to consciously override maladaptive patterns and develop healthier, more adaptive behaviors and thought processes. So even though we are going to always choose the familiar hell over the unfamiliar heaven, when the prefrontal cortex is healthy, we're able to gain awareness and observe what's going on, and then make conscious decisions of how to rewire and reprogram. Now, the rewiring and the reprogramming, this part is in the mind, the prefrontal cortex, but the rewiring of the nervous systems and the rewriting of the beliefs, the rewriting of it, so to speak, is coming from in the body. It's in the nervous system. So what does the nervous system do? The nervous system regulates psychological and emotional responses based on early childhood experiences. It learns to react to familiar patterns of safety or familiar patterns of threat, right? So what we're doing is we're shaping automatic behaviors and emotional states that influence our perceptions and relationships throughout life. Big thing is perceptions, and we're going to talk about perceptions in a couple of videos from now. But perceptions can always be examined, but they feel like they're true until we become aware of them. Okay, let's see. Let's get over to the next slide. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the storyteller. That's your prefrontal cortex. So you can imagine the prefrontal cortex as a storyteller with the creativity of Hemingway, Nicholas Sparks, and Stephen King. Given the same event, it can wildly tell different stories, right? Weaving a gritty adventure and tender romance or a spine-chilling horror, showing how our interpretations shape our unique perceptions of reality. So you can have the same experience, you could have the same experience as someone else and retell the story completely different. So the event could be the same and the experience could be completely different, because you've got Nicholas Sparks writing a romance novel in your head based on the event of what you just witnessed, and your partner or your friend has got a Stephen King storyteller that's going on. We all have many different storytellers inside of our mind, and it's all based on this childhood early programming that's being filtered and creating the perceptions. When we get triggered, for example, we're always reacting to the worst case perception. Perception is like a generalized state of being, like being abandoned, I'm being abused, I'm being betrayed, I'm being rejected. So if you get triggered, it's your worst case perception, because that's the ego's job, is to say, I'll keep you alive. We can survive this. So let's be skeptical and let's perceive that this is happening in worst case scenario. And don't worry, it's all happening in the unconscious level, the subconscious of the mind. So you're not even aware that you're doing it. That's why you think it's so true. And then we find evidence to go support our perception and the way that we're telling the story. We go look at evidence, and then we complain and we blame and we shame. And this is a way to keep the ego alive, doing its job. And anyways, this is a little bit about the storyteller. I don't want to dive too far down into that. We can get into that a little bit later. So let's talk a little bit about the nervous system. In the nervous system, there's a major superhighway of information. It's called the vagus nerve. And think of the vagus nerve as a two-way communication highway with 80% of the traffic flowing from the body up to the brain, and only 20% of the traffic, the communication traffic, is going from the brain down to the body. And so just as a bowl holds a complex soup of ingredients, your body holds the rich mixture of the biochemicals that make up emotions and sensations, sending constant updates to your brain, and you cannot outthink the body. So this is where positive affirmations don't work, right? You stare in the mirror and you just sit there and you try to convince yourself of something that the body doesn't believe, because the subconscious beliefs are all living and programmed into the nervous system. So the nervous system has got these beliefs, and whatever gets triggered is going to send 80% of the traffic, right? The communication traffic up to the mind. And then you're going to try to like calm yourself down. Oh, be calm. Oh, and this is why you get so pissed when someone tells you like, just calm down. Well, a deep wound was touched. 80% of all the information is shooting up to the brain. This is all of your emotions, the sensations, the fear, the anxiety, the anger, the rage. And then someone comes to you and they're like, it's fine. Now think of like a little mouse going across the floor, and you might be the person, or you've seen the person, and the mouse comes running across the floor and they lose their freaking shit, right? And they just uncork and they dysregulate the whole house. And you're like, it was just a mouse. Well, there's these beliefs and all this flood of information, and these neurochemicals are running up to the brain and telling the brain, hey, we got to figure out what to go do. And it's communicating with the limbic system. Now, the prefrontal cortex is now reasoning with that. And the prefrontal cortex is like, oh, whoops, that was just a mouse. False alarm, not a big deal. But if you're dysregulated, you cannot outthink the body and tell the body to calm down. The body's going to do what the body's going to do, and it's because of this big superhighway of information. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to continue with these default big reactions and these big emotions. This is where the shift in consciousness comes in, where we can start slowly going through exposure behavior therapy type techniques and being able to gentle the nervous system and build confidence within ourselves, and build trust within ourselves, and learn who we really are and how powerful and amazing that we actually are. But this has to go through really hard, challenging experiences. So I hope that in safe ways, and I hope that this is making sense on this. And this was just a little bit about the prefrontal cortex and the body. And we'll see you guys in the next video.